Probably the least socially acceptable activity today is smoking. States everywhere have heavily regulated the act of smoking, and some, such as Australia, are contemplating banning it entirely. But why? Why is the perspective shifting on smoking? Why is it now seen as a unique evil? The answer is said to lie in its consequences on health and on the predatory nature of consumerism and advertising. It's today well known that smoking is hazardous to one's health. Additionally, it's addictive. Tobacco companies, taking advantage of the vicious nature of addiction, got millions of people hooked on cigarettes via advertising and the promotion of smoking as cool in film and entertainment. Peer pressure has also driven many to smoke. We know about all this since it's relentlessly piled upon us for our own good.
Why do they hate tobacco? And it's not because it causes cancer. They don't care about your health. They closed the gyms during COVID. Anyone who closed a gym during a pandemic that killed people who were fat clearly doesn't care about your health at all. They hate nicotine. They love THC. They're promoting weed to your children, but they're not letting you use tobacco or even non-tobacco nicotine delivery devices, which don't cause cancer. Why do they hate nicotine? Because nicotine frees your mind, and THC makes you compliant and passive. That's why.
Perhaps the most infamous marketing campaign, and one of the most deeply studied, was the Torches of Freedom campaign, led by Edward Bernays, who wrote extensively on the subject of advertising, propaganda, and herd psychology. This campaign was designed to make it socially acceptable for women to smoke because, at the turn of the century, it was unfashionable. In the past, smoking was associated with prostitutes and fallen women. Smoking was always associated with the peasantry, with low-class persons. You can find scathing remarks against smoking in the works of Enlightenment-era aristocrats, even into the works of Carlyle. Even the Tobacco League lobbied for the exclusive depiction of female smokers as licentious or immoral in film. In 1908, the New York Board of Aldermen passed a law prohibiting women from smoking in public. Around the 1920s, however, women began to view smoking as an act of rebellion. The cigarette became a symbol for the liberation of women and the movement for the equality of the sexes. Perhaps nothing demonstrates how corrosive consumerism is on traditional social norms better than this episode in history. At this time, tobacco companies sensed how big a market they were missing out on, and they began advertising smoking to women. Edward Bernays would hold a parade on Easter Sunday, 1929, where he instructed female marchers to smoke publicly. These efforts, combined, caused the rate of female cigarette smoking to increase from 12% in 1939 to 18.1%. By 1965, 33.3% of women became smokers, O'Keefe et al., 1996. By this coalescence of acts, the social taboo against female smokers was eliminated, marching in lockstep with the emancipation of women from traditional social norms. At some point, though, the momentum of the smoking industry would come to a standstill, largely due to the emergence of strong evidence that smoking was dangerous, alongside the impact of lobbyists vying for the regulation of tobacco products. Warning labels on cigarette packages and other measures were implemented in an effort to dissuade the public from smoking. It worked. Where once upper-class engineers, intellectuals, and entertainers smoked, now it was only the roughneck, the hedonistic anarchist, or the homeless man who smokes. The crushing weight of public policy came down upon the social parade. Smoking, though, has always been an act of subtle rebellion. This has not changed with the times. We are surrounded by a sea of no smoking signs, burdened by anti-smoking laws, and in some countries, such as Australia, laws against tobacco smoking itself are being contemplated. And now, this rebellion is no longer that of the leftist anarchist or the erudite socialist. Everyone is being told by the technocratic elite that smoking is to be banned for our own good. But is it? Is it really for the best that smoking be banned? It's hard to escape the essential classism of anti-smoking. Those born after the age of tobacco regulation are scared silly by anti-smoking propaganda. Cigarette cartons in some states have gross depictions of cancers and other deformities designed to dissuade people from ever picking up a cigarette. Generation Z is perhaps the most afraid to smoke, and they view with disdain, along with the millennials, those who do. They have instead taken up vaping, which is emblematic of the modern tendency toward convenience, technology, and speed. The slowness of smoking was erased by the vape pen, which can be employed almost anywhere at a moment's notice. Smokers seem to largely be working class. The smoke break is a fixture of low-skill, minimum-wage jobs or blue-collar jobs. The middle and upper class know only of corporate happy hour or of the coffee break. Smoking has become, once again, a sign of foolishness and disregard for the prevailing social custom. And it's not just that, but it's antisocial, a sign of delinquency. This, though, need not be the case. It's my observation that smoking is not the exclusive prerogative of the low-intelligence working man, but rather it appears to me like this. The dumbest and the smartest people smoke, but not the middle. Those in the middle are the most susceptible to propaganda. They are uncritical and have low agency. They are midwits, only capable of parroting what the establishment tells them to believe, being seldom capable of critically making their own decisions, being afraid to take informed risks. In 1929, they would have been impressed by Bernays' antics, and they would have picked up a torch of freedom. Today, they are scared by the health establishment's warnings and by the government's propaganda. But it's the low and the high, in this instance, that exhibit a greater amount of agency, willing to accept the dangers in order to avail themselves of the benefits. We cannot reduce smoking to a mere act of hedonic and anarchistic rebellion or reckless rage. The left does not get to own smoking. Its virtues cannot be extolled enough. Smoking is a fundamentally relaxing activity. It stills the mind, calms the senses, and relieves the worst anxieties. The working man, beset by the vicissitudes of menial labor and the totalitarian capitalist work environment, needs his smoke breaks. Smoking keeps him sane. The intelligent man smokes for similar and yet radically different reasons. Smoking enhances the wits, it accelerates the mental processes, it makes the handling of vast amounts of information mere child's play. The pipe, the cigarette, and the cigar are all natural sidekicks to the book. There is, therefore, no reason for this class elitism regarding smoking. It is an artificial, top-down construction designed to bestow upon the impressionable middle an unjustified elitism of mediocrity, with which it senselessly browbeats those better than them in either intelligence or character, so that they can assuage their own feelings of inferiority. In those capable of any degree of elaboration or greatness, smoking has been a reliable companion to their exploits. Take, for instance, infamous for his exaggerated corncob pipe, or perhaps Winston Churchill, who smoked 8 cigars per day and after whom the elongated and excessive Churchill shave of cigar was named. Joseph Stalin smoked, as did Mark Twain. A favorite right and quasi-traditionalist historian, Mircea Eliade, smoked as well. The famous singer, Crosby, can hardly be imagined without his pipe. In the shadow of all these prominent smokers, the classism of anti-smoking can hardly be approved. It is truly the reign of the mediocre, tyrannizing the great man and the common man alike. Unironically, smoking is based, perhaps the most base thing you can do. The technocratic elite wishes to use their authority to take all of this away from us, to complete the system of global mediocrity. They want us to, in the words of that Radiohead song, be fitter, happier, and more productive. They do not ban smoking for our own good, they ban it for their own good. They would rather have you live in this cyberpunk hellscape to the age of 99 while they continue to increase the retirement age. They want to take away the one thing that makes labor bearable, only to crash more over your head. The motive of the system behind banning smoking is to extract as much labor out of you to keep you healthy enough to labor for the rest of your life, even past your prime. They do not care about your health. If they cared about your health, they would leave their sinecures and put an end to this industrial madness. This controversy over the health impacts of smoking is as far away from what is essential in society as possible, and yet this is the issue that they choose to raise the greatest cacophony about. They want to squeeze the very last bit of autonomy out of you, to keep you a pliant and productive wage slave. All the while, they install suicide pods and put seed oil and soy into your food. Is it really about your health? No, it's about autonomy and social control. Tucker Carlson pointed out a salient fact on the matter. All the while that the elite have been instituting the anti-smoking campaign, they've been silently legalizing psychedelic drugs, such as marijuana. Marijuana dulls the mind, it turns one into a slave to nature. Nicotine, on the other hand, like coffee, sharpens the mind. The agenda behind this becomes obvious, and it goes beyond merely the hypocrisy of the matter. A dissident on nicotine is far more dangerous than a dissident on weed. The Marxist revolution was carried out in coffee houses. What a wonderful stimulant coffee is. Could it have possibly been carried out if they were all doped up on weed? But the conservative revolution will be carried out on the smoke break. I have complete confidence in this. Under the burden of the technocratic elite, smoking is an act of subtle and yet supreme revolt. They want you to languish in torpidity, to sink down into dissolution under the dual effects of alcohol and dope. They want you on fentanyl, on heroin, on codeine and purple drink. Could Mark Twain have possibly authored his lauded works on activists? No, they want you intellectually diffused and morally bankrupt. The industrialization of smoking was the greatest mistake. Scientists have deliberately engineered the cheapest and most addictive form of tobacco consumption, the cigarette. Nothing is more insipid and pointless than the cigarette. It is devoid of flavor, it tastes like hot air, it's full of poison and sugar, wrapped in cancerous paper made in some factory somewhere. It is designed for mass and high-quantity consumption, not for enjoyment nor enhancement of the individual. Cigarettes are the most dangerous form of smoking. How wasteful and devoid of purpose is it to inhale? The most based way to smoke is the cigar and the pipe. Studies have shown that moderate cigar and pipe smoking is little more harmful than not smoking at all, and yet the FDA comes down on these products too, perhaps because of the infamy that cigarettes have branded this pastime with. The cigar and the pipe, unlike the cigarette, are mediums that convey the greatest range of complex flavors, and since they are relatively safe, one has little to lose by indulging. But the cigarette is the eternal enemy. The cigarette is a synecdoche of the rot that is consumer industrial society, continually replacing what is safe and sound with what is engineered through propaganda and technique to be as predatory and profitable as possible. It's as if smoking were locked in a pincer between the technocrats on one side and the cigarette industry on the other, both vying to transform such a great thing into blandness, the regime of beige. If we remove ourselves from the sorry prejudice that is the cigarette, if we scorn that hideous abomination, then we can arrive at a new paradigm of smoking. Smoking is actually beneficial to one's health. Our world is one of constant movement, endless action for action's sake, pointless boondoggle, and slavery. Smoking requires one to, on the contrary, sit still, to relax, and to do nothing. Smoking was quote-unquote foolish in the past, but today it actually brings one closer to the traditional virtue of inaction. It forces you to stop and to contemplate, to think rather than to move pointlessly about. It is such a great antidote to the stresses of the modern world that nothing can replace it. Do not let them take it from you. I believe that it's time to take back smoking, to put it in its proper place as the adjunct to the greatness and agency of good people. Smoke. It's for your health.